Hi everyone, it's Adam here from DNF1. Just before we begin the podcast, I wanted to quickly share with you some exciting news. For this month, the DNF1 podcast is proudly sponsored by Manscaped. For the entire month of March, you can get hold of some great Manscaped products like this, and plenty more other great products on their website for 20% off and free shipping.
Oh my god! Wow!
All you have to do is head over to manscaped.com and use our promo code DNF1 to receive 20% off your order and also free shipping too. We loved using Manscaped products and we know that you will too, so make sure to get yours now. Trust us, your balls will thank you. So hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the DNF1 F1 Podcast, the show where we take all of the latest news, gossip and rumours around the world of Formula One and we relay it back to you for a nice healthy bit of discussion for your listening or viewing pleasure, depending on what platform you choose to follow us on. And of course, my co-host, Mr. Courtney Pine, joining me first of all. Courtney, how are you doing? Are you okay?
Hello, everyone. Yeah, these teams are certainly keeping us busy at the moment, and with pre-season just around the corner, certainly going to need a rest after going through all these car reveals.
Yes, and I can understand, you know, we've done so many of these. I mean, some already, a lot of you guys are probably thinking, surely not another one.
You're joking. Not another one? Oh, for God's sake.
There are some teams, obviously, you don't care for. There are some teams that you're more interested in, and that's absolutely fine. You know, we're just going to cover all of them because we love F1 that much. And this is kind of like Christmas for us, really. All the little presents to see what you're going to get. And it's some
but with some of these, some of these teams, and just my personal perspective, I think going through this particular team and particularly one of the drivers that we're going to be talking about, it's kind of like opening up a present, right, that you don't like, and your relatives staring you right in the face, and you go, "Oh, that's nice."
Have you?
What does that feel about this one?
Do you know what? That's a funny analogy because it's kind of, to me, it's like, do you remember that video when we were kids and you get a Nintendo 64? Like that was like the it console to have when we were growing, like when we were like 5 or 6 or something like that.
I feel old.
And I remember that kid that got that video, that kid that got that Nintendo 64, and he's screaming, he's like, Nintendo 64! Oh my god! That kid, that was me when I got mine. Obviously, you know, not me, but that was my reaction, similar to that. I suppose for some of these cars, perhaps the one we're going to review now, it's more like that kid, that Vine, where he gets an avocado. And he took it in front of his parents and goes, "Oh my God, an avocado." And then he just looks for a minute and goes, "Thanks." And then he just puts it to the side. That's the equivalent of the present we're going to get.
Yeah,
now. But,
pretty much.
And I think as much thought has been put into this gift as an avocado, I suppose. So I mean, to some people, they might like an avocado for Christmas. Not us. I'm not a big fan of avocados. But anyway, this is a Formula One podcast. We could go on about foods that we like and don't like all day. We're going to be talking about the Haas. The VF-21 has broken cover. And first things first, Courtney, what did you think of the livery? Did you like the look of the livery? Was it a nice design for you, or are you not a fan?
It's fairly basic. For me, it looks like a B-Tech Alpine. I think that's probably the best way to describe it. And I'm also not keen on the political aspect on it. I know Formula One is very political, but I'm just looking, I think there's enough controversy surrounding this team right now. Why even do that? It just seems to me that Haas are making one effort, shall we say, after another, and I think they need to be choosing the next steps fairly wisely in order to survive in Formula One, because they have one thing going for them at the moment, one thing, and that is Mick Schumacher. Mick Schumacher is carrying that team from a marketing perspective.
And it's strange because, you know, we've almost forgotten the fact that the son of the 7 times world champion, some consider the greatest of all time, is actually driving in this car. Like, the limelight has been completely taken away from that story and shifted elsewhere, not necessarily for the right reasons. But in terms of the car itself, the livery was designed by, I think it was Brandon Saber Designs, but forgive me if I've got that wrong. But overall, and I want to make a point of this, overall, I think the design is pretty good. considering what I imagine the criteria and restrictions that Brandon would have had in designing this livery. And now I understand a lot of people probably not that aren't fans of this design are more leaning towards the fact that it contains the Russian flag and it's the sponsors Uralkali, the title sponsors for Haas this season, who are family owned by the Mazepins. That's no secret. Everyone knows that in Formula One. So it's no surprise that kind of livery is on the car. I suppose because of what's happened over the winter period with Nikita Mazepin in particular, it's kind of soured people's perspectives on the actual livery itself. Now, I understand that. That's not me saying, you guys don't know what you're talking about if you don't like the car. Yeah, you're entitled to your opinion. I think the design looks good based on what the designer had to work with. I think they did a very, very good job. So, so kudos to you, Brandon Saber.
It still doesn't compare to the Alpine, though.
No,
the Alpine is still so much better.
No, I will make that point. The Alpine is absolutely stunning and is still my favorite car. I know people saying about the Aston Martin, it's good, but it could have been better in my opinion. And, there's rumors about the influence of BWT as a sponsor to put the pink on the car instead of the lime green yellow that perhaps they originally were going to have. It might explain the advertisement color scheme that, alluded to that being one of the colors on there, but it's changed all of a sudden for pink. So maybe there's some truth in that. But with the Haas itself, obviously, we've already talked about the livery on the car and why it looks the way that it does. I think it looks okay and it's a pretty good job under the circumstances, but I digress. As for the car itself, Courtney, you and perhaps some people that aren't really interested in the technical stuff will be happy to know that there's literally hardly anything to talk about from a technical perspective because it's a 2020 car. The launch itself was a 2020 car, and we know this because the floor that they used was 2020 spec. And obviously, they're not going to be able to use that floor in preseason testing or during the season because it's been banned because of the aero changes for 2021. So Haas have pretty much painted a 2020 car in the new livery. Now, the main reason for this, guys, is Haas aren't going to run an illegal car. We know that. But it's mostly because they're not going to make any development to this 2021 car at all. The car that we eventually see at Bahrain or even pre-season testing will be the car that Haas will run for the entire year. And they kind of did this last year as well. The only changes you're going to see are some aero updates on the car that will be based on parts that they were able to develop in 2020, but not able to manufacture it. And the reason for this was because of COVID-19. There was a lot of cost cutting going on at Haas, and given the situation they were in at the start of the season, they made a conscious decision to literally slash their development budget so that they could do some research on upgrades for the car, but they wouldn't be going on the car or being manufactured to save money. So they've decided to push that back all the way to 2021. They will most likely appear on this car, and it will be the same process for the rest of the season. The only changes that you will see are changes to the side pods and the engine cover at the rear end of the car to accommodate the new Ferrari power unit, which what Gunther Steiner has said and what other rumors have been going around do believe that Ferrari have made a significant step forward in their engine performance, which is good news to Ferrari and also Ferrari customers like Haas and Alfa Romeo. But that doesn't change the fact, ultimately, Courtney, that this could prove to be a very difficult season for Haas, whether or not that they care. But the priority does look to have shifted towards 2022 rather than try and work on both projects.
With all the other cars that we've spoken through, we've always sort of mentioned the risk of, putting too much into 2021 and possibly struggling in 2022, and the importance of getting 2022 right. For Haas, they're very survival rely on this because they're going to take the hit this season. They're most 100% certain to finish last, even if Ferrari do make a big upgrade. It'd be a miracle if they don't finish at the very bottom. But if they get it wrong in 2022, I can't see this team surviving, mate. I really can't.
Well, this is the big risk because Haas, there was always uncertainty over their future in Formula One, whether they were going to sign the Concord Agreement and commit to the next 5 years in the sport up to 2025. They eventually did sign that agreement, and they've already spent a year in 2019, as we already said, and 2020, I should say, not developing the car at all. They turned up with a reasonably decent car. It was on the back end of the midfield, looking like they could try and challenge the likes of AlphaTauri at best. It was ahead of Alfa Romeo and the Williams. But as the season went on, Haas didn't develop the car at all. They still had issues on the car that they were trying to address at the front end, which was causing issues with low to mid-speed corners, something they've suffered with for a long time, probably the last 3 years. And, you know, Haas are in this position now where whatever car they rolled out this season, you know, they're completely sacrificing another year. The second year in a row, they're sacrificing the short term for the long term game. And you're absolutely right, Courtney. Even though they're going to be, technically speaking, the most prepared team with the most time allocated to the 2022 project, there's no guarantee that it's going to be successful. And if they don't get it right, i.e., be a team that's a prominent challenger in the midfield and maybe challenging for the odd podium if they're lucky, it could have serious implications on whether or not Gene Haas wants to continue the Haas project in Formula One, because I don't think when he joined Formula One with Haas in 2016, he envisioned Haas, especially after the first race. Let's not forget the performance. I think Grosjean come fifth in the first race, saying famously on the radio, "This is a win for us in Melbourne." I don't think he envisioned after that race that Haas would go on the route that it has gone and be at the very back of the grid. I mean, in 2018, with the controversy regarding was the Haas of 2017 Ferrari, and the rules copying and everything else. This is like the OG Racing Point saga from what we saw last year, and that car at times was the fourth fastest car on the grid. They got fifth in the championship, but since then they've been going downhill, basically having to sacrifice the short term for the long term game. They sense the opportunities 2022. I understand that with the budget constraints and everything that they're facing at Haas, but this is a huge risk. And if it doesn't pay off, Courtney, you're absolutely right. This could be the final nail in the coffin for Haas F1, which would be a true shame, but it may be inevitable at this point.
I really do feel sorry for Mick Schumacher, even before he steps into the car for testing, let alone his first race. There's so much negativity surrounding his team, whether it be financial, whether it be from media perspective, and even from the fans. Don't get me wrong, the fans are going to be getting behind Mick Schumacher as an individual, but I think you're going to find very, very few people getting behind Haas as a team. And I don't know, unless this team wires up, I think they're really going to struggle in the coming years, mate. I really do.
Could well do, and there might not be the money to put into that. I mean, a lot of what they're doing this year in 2022 is being funded in part by Uralkali, the title sponsors for this season, which, as we've already mentioned, is owned by the Mazepin family. I mean, Gunther Steiner, they asked him about this, why Haas are deciding to go with this tactic for 2022. I think I've got the quote here, actually. He basically said, it's no secret that the VF-21 will not be developed as we focus our energies now on the 2022 car and what we hope will be a more level playing field. We all know roughly where we expect to be in the season in terms of competition, but we must ensure we're there to capitalize on opportunities when they present themselves. I would prefer Gunther Steiner to have said, like he did on Netflix, the old saying that they look like a bunch of fucking wankers. And just, I mean, I love Gunther Steiner. And I love that quote, and everyone in F1 that's seen that loves that quote from him. He's an absolute legend from that point onwards. But it is a shame that Haas are going to have to subject themselves. And there's a lot of great people working at Haas at the moment. So I feel like this is a big risk for them. For those people that are probably wondering, whilst I'm saying all this from the technical perspective, well, Haas will get the benefit of using 2020 Ferrari parts in their car as per the rules, allowing them to use listed parts or upgrade to last year's listed parts from their supplier teams without incurring any token spend. Not that Haas were going to spend tokens anyway. Well, the problem is a lot of the parts that they're referring to, the listed parts, Haas were actually already using 2020 Ferrari parts last year. They can't upgrade to the 2021 parts in certain areas without using the token. So they're going to still be quite limited on what upgrades they can actually get from Ferrari. So it's almost like a double whammy anyway, on how Haas will be affected by not developing their car going forward. So they're not going to have that added benefit that Alfa Romeo got that are going to get, or AlphaTauri or Aston Martin, etc., etc. So it doesn't make for good reading for Haas at the moment in F1. It really does look like that Haas may have had aspirations to challenge the midfield in 2022, but I tell you what, it very much looks like Haas are going to be at the very back of the grid in terms of performance. Obviously, they will have to make changes to compensate for the aero upgrades, for the new regulations. You know, they're not going to run a 2020 spec car. They can't. But it does look like Alfa Romeo even will most likely be their best challenge, will be their biggest rivals this season, if anybody else, because we expect Williams to improve, and they were pretty much on their pace, if not ahead of them in some regards. Alfa Romeo are going to get the same equipment in terms of engine power, plus 2020 listed parts that Ferrari didn't give them last season that Haas already had. So it's going to be a very difficult season for Haas in that regard.
Yeah, I've already sort of said I think they're going to finish bottom, and yeah, if they don't get 2022 right, Adam, I think it's curtains for them. I sound like I'm on a real downer, but I just think there's so many things wrong with this team at the moment, and geez, they need this team. If you're thinking from Gene Haas' perspective, you know, you said I didn't expect to see this 5 years ago. At this point, Gene Haas should be thinking, you know what, with 2022, this team needs a revamp, because from a marketing perspective, this team is a disaster. No doubt about it. It's a disaster.
I think we need to kind of look at this from the perspective of American franchises that go into plenty of sports. I mean, we've seen in so many sports across the world, America takes great pride in their franchises when they sort of venture into other avenues outside of their domain. Formula One definitely being one of them. And every time that they do try to throw their hat into a sport like Formula One, they really do want to make a go at it, whether it's through the races or through drivers. You know, there's so much talent in America that doesn't quite make it into Formula One, possibly because they have this conception that it's more of a European sport. I think I can understand why that'd be true in the past, but that's definitely not the case now. In Haas's case, it was always a breath of fresh air when Haas entered to the sport. Very much Americanized element in Formula One. They held on to that as well with their American base. They obviously have a base in the UK as well to help with the logistics side of things, but it was very much an American team. And with that, there's always an expectation of them to be successful. You know, Gene Haas is one of those guys, like he's done in other race series like NASCAR, where he's obviously more well known. He's wanted to make sure that he's successful everywhere he goes. And I think he genuinely believed that he could do that. Obviously, the route that Haas went in Formula One, you know, buying a stock car in 2015 and working with that for 2016, and it did start off pretty well. In 2018, obviously had the development with Ferrari, the partnership, and that worked brilliantly. But since then, it's kind of gone downhill, and it does make me wonder how more committed they can possibly be into making this project work in Formula One, because it's proven to be very difficult. And there's new projects coming in. Like I said, AlphaTauri trying to go their own way. McLaren now teaming up with Mercedes again. Aston Martin, Alpine. A lot more exciting brands are entering into the sport, and it's almost making Haas feel like a bit of an afterthought. I just don't know how Gene Haas is going to want to continue funding into a project that is literally paying nothing back in dividends. If anything, is more detrimental to his racing brand.
Well, Michael, the Mick Schumacher arrival is great. You know, there's going to be plenty of attention on Mick, you know, seeing how well he can get on. Will he potentially follow his father's footsteps going on to Ferrari? That is a great marketing employer for the team. But the other driver is the issue. I'm sure we'll be going on to the drivers in a moment. It sort of represents a bigger problem and frustrations that fans have about some of these drivers. You know, it seems that the other drivers there primarily because of his family connections and the money that they bring. But I'll just look at some of the other drivers that Haas could have looked, even maybe Daniel Kvyat or one of the other Ferrari drivers like Callum Ilott. I was expecting it to be Callum Ilott, Mick Schumacher, the two Formula 2 rivals from last season in the same team, battling it out. That would have been great to see. But unfortunately, because of the series of events that have followed on with their financial difficulties, from a marketing perspective and from the general perspective of the team, from F1 fans, it's not good. It's not good.
Well, I mean, since we're on the subject, let's talk about Nikita Mazepin first. So, yeah, Nikita Mazepin, very much probably one of the most disliked Formula One drivers of all time. And ironically, for something he hasn't done in F1 yet, rather than actually in F1. And as I said, we're not going to talk about the incident much itself. I think enough has been said on that anyway. Of course, what's followed from that, it was poor conduct in, one thing we can all agree on, it was terrible conduct. And that's the lightest way of putting it. It triggered the We Say No to Mazepin social media campaign, which is obviously still going on. The FIA and Formula One, this was kind of the thing. They very much distanced themselves from, making us a resolution from this and actually getting involved. They pretty much let Haas deal with it and then just said, yep, that's fine, let Haas deal with it. And it really did put a spanner in the works of the We Racers One campaign and obviously equality, especially when they're making strides in that area with the, the end racism movements and everything else supporting Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes.
Yeah, Adam, can I just quickly, and I just think it's been badly dealt with by the FIA. It's just, I don't know, this could be me. I know there'll be some people that agree, some people that disagree, but I'm just saying this from my own perspective. The FIA seem to be more angry about the shirt that Lewis Hamilton wore about Breonna Taylor than what Mazepin did. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah. Please let me know. Please let me know in the comments. No, the FIA done some good things with the equal rights, spearheaded by Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes. But the way they've reacted to the Mazepin thing seems to be an own goal by the FIA. And this goes back to what we've been saying about this team. It just seems the situation with this team is toxic. It's not good for the team. It's not good for Mick Schumacher. It's not actually good for the sport in general, because some of the assumptions made about Formula One drivers and sport itself, that they're spoiled, they always get their own way, they can get away with doing whatever they want without consequence. Where are we now with this? I don't know. It's not good for the sport in general. And I'll be honest, I just hope that common sense prevails and that team going to 2022 revamped, because I want to be seeing as many well-run teams, nice stories going on, tight midfield, loads of battles. That's what we want to be seeing as fans. I'd rather be spending my time talking about great battles on track rather than talking about bad feeling and sort of badly run teams. I'd rather not be like this. I'd rather be looking forward to next season with excitement. And this is the one team that really kind of brings that negativity when it comes to 2021. Don't know about you, Adam. I'm done ranting.
No, that's absolutely fine. I mean, I can't disagree with you. The reaction from following the Mugello podium with Lewis Hamilton wearing the shirt regarding Breonna Taylor from the FIA was quite shocking. And I think their reaction, what followed when they decided not to go further with it, was a result of the fanfare reaction and the reaction of the general public in support of Lewis Hamilton overwhelmingly for what he's used his platform to do. And I absolutely commend the gentleman for doing it. He was absolutely spot on. And it's those hypocrisies and those issues that need to be changed from the ground up. And what I learned, or what I personally felt from that situation with Nikita Mazepin regarding F1 and the FIA, was that they possibly never intended to be put in a position where they would actually have to act on someone doing something that detrimented the values of the We Racers One campaign, or anti-racism or anti-sexism or anything like that. I don't think they ever expected that to ever happen, but it did. And basically, they did nothing. They sat on their hands and just put all the responsibility on Haas, who, let's be honest, with all respect to Uralkali or Russia or anything, all of that to do with Nikita Mazepin, we're not talking about them in this regard. They're companies that obviously want to be represented by a Russian driver and give them all the backing possible to make that that's their business. But because of the monetary influence and the need that Haas has to have the revenue in their team, there was always only ever going to be one outcome. And that's the one that we got. And in their mind, they're probably just hoping that eventually, with enough time and Nikita puts in decent performances, admits to his mistakes, which he sort of hasn't really done, even after the press conference he had, they just carry on. And over time, they just expect people to forget about it. The important thing is now that people are not allowing that to happen. it's obviously not as rife as it was when it happened or when it was fresh, but that's kind of the reality that we're in at the moment. So yeah, I understand for F1 and the FIA to really be taken seriously in terms of the equality campaigns. I mean, let's not forget that the W Series, the women's racing series, which has been fantastic since its introduction a few years ago, is now going to be on the F1 weekend. So it doesn't really set a good precedent when the young women that are trying to get into Formula One, and this is their platform to do it, on the same weekend with all the visibility and exposure that comes with that as the actual F1 weekend itself. It doesn't really inspire much confidence that the FIA and F1 in particular are doing enough to give them the equal opportunities and consideration. I mean, we've had some women try to break into Formula One and some test drivers, try to get into Formula One. I think it's inevitable that a woman will end up in Formula One at some point. When, I don't know, but it's these sorts of things where you do wonder where the priorities really lie in terms of the senior management or the ones making those decisions. It's quite worrying and disappointing that no one really took any action on it. They just let Haas deal with it. But look, that aside, we said enough already about the incident itself. I mean, Nikita Mazepin, he had a press conference where he did some questions on this. I think I've got a couple of quotes that I can share with you if that's okay, based on what he said. So when he come to address this issue, he basically said, I would like to say a big thank you to the team Haas because they've been really supportive in helping me to learn, obviously from what he did. They've been very patient in taking the time and helping me learn in my education phase of the behavior and incident. I'm way further than I've ever been, so that's very helpful. He then goes on to say, I understand I have taken the responsibility for it, as I said previously, both on and off the circuit. We as human beings have to show a certain behavior towards each other to live in a calm and humanity world. So I understand that I will be one of those humans from now on. Now, first things first, he still actually doesn't apologize for the incident. That was one thing I was surprised. I thought, if you understand the situation, just apologize. Just say you're sorry for what happened. You regret it. It was wrong, and just move on. That's that's one thing you can do. All of this other stuff that comes with it, fine. Great to acknowledge that. And Haas, if they have put measures in place to make sure that his future conduct is more proper of a Formula One driver as a role model, which he is, whether he likes it or not, he is a sporting role model. Maybe he was before and he didn't realize it, but he is now, and he's going to be on the global stage. But the proof is going to be in the pudding. If Nikita Mazepin can just get his head down and drive, and also cut out some of the dangerous, aggressive driving that he showed in F1 and F3, and drive more like Nikita Mazepin that won races in F2, was a title challenger last season, and in F3, that will, in some part, as far as the driving caliber goes, work to his benefit. In terms of the humanity aspects, I'm not really convinced by the quotes that he made or statements. I'm not going to judge him what he does afterwards based on what he said now, but there is an expectation, and the scrutiny and the magnifying glass will be literally as close to his crash helmet as you can imagine, to basically keep an eye on him in case anything like this happens again. Hopefully it doesn't, but that's the reality Haas find themselves in, and also Nikita Mazepin too. On an interesting note, actually, this is probably worth mentioning. With Russia, with the doping scandal that befell them during the Sochi Olympic Games in the winter and in 2014 as well. One thing I did see is that obviously the Court of Arbitration of Sport have suspended them for the next 2 years, I believe, where they can't compete in world championship events.
That's right.
Formula One. So Nikita Mazepin technically can't represent Russia as a Formula One driver. I don't know how they do it. Probably be something similar to what the Olympics do, with like independent from nationality or something like that. So if there is a chance that he gets a podium for Haas, it'd be interesting to see what flag that they use. But in addition to that, it seems that this livery that they've done is kind of the clever way of getting around that. I know Haas said quite a lot that the livery was not inspired because of this issue. This is just a coincidence.
Looks that way.
It certainly does. It's kind of like, well, we can't have him represent Russia or anything like that, but we're just going to paint the Russian flag on the car, which is fine. But it is quite funny in a way that this is the way around it. So it's almost like, well, no matter what you address it as, we all know he's going to be representing Russia, and that's on the car. And I'm pretty sure when we get to the Russian Grand Prix later in the year, there's, we thought what they had for Danny Kvyat with his face on stands and everything, I imagine the parade is going to be coming out for Nikita Mazepin or a celebration of him. They might just rename it the Nikita Mazepin Grand Prix of Russia or something like that. But, anyway, look, we've spoken a lot on Nikita Mazepin. I think it's best now we move on to Mick Schumacher. So
yes, please. Yes, please.
Mick Schumacher. So the other driver in the Haas, if you hadn't already heard, the son of the 7-time world champion Michael Schumacher will be making his long-awaited Formula One debut this season. And I'll tell you what, Courtney, I am so excited to see Mick Schumacher. As a huge Michael Schumacher fan myself, growing up idolizing Michael, it is almost a bit surreal to see that his son is now driving in Formula One. Obviously, it's not going to be in the best car. And the idea is that perhaps one day he will get to Ferrari. I think for the benefit of those that haven't really followed Mick Schumacher's junior career, how impressed have you been by Mick Schumacher so far? And how confident do you feel that he is going to make a big impact in Formula One?
Well, the last couple of seasons, he's certainly taken a step forward. Like, I'll be honest, 3-4 years ago, I just didn't think he'd find the right route into Formula One, because he sort of struggled in his first season in F2, started fast and struggled at the tail end of it. But last season, obviously winning the championship, fairly comfortably as well, and Callum Ilott part of a good challenge. It's just a shame that he isn't there as well. I think it's a perfect time for him to come into Formula One for obvious reasons. It's just a shame he didn't go to somewhere like Alfa Romeo, where I think he'll have had a bit more of an opportunity to shine. But it is what it is, and I'm sure a lot of people back up what I'm about to say and wishing him the best of luck with this, because he's starting off in a pretty bad environment. But rest assured, I think 99% of Formula One fans are going to be well and truly behind Mick Schumacher this season. I hope he does well, and you never know, if it all goes well, he might get a move to a bigger team and then eventually get a chance at Ferrari. I personally hope that really happens. It'd be great to see.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it wouldn't be fair for us to expect Mick Schumacher to be in a Ferrari in 3 or 4 years' time, especially considering the driver lineup they currently have in Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz. I mean, I think that's a fantastic driver lineup. And it wouldn't be fair to Carlos Sainz in particular, the driver you'd expect to have to make way if one of them was to go, to make room for Mick Schumacher. It wouldn't be fair to Carlos Sainz. I think he's going to do a fantastic job there. But in Mick Schumacher, yes, there is the expectation, there is the hope that he can in some way or shape or form emulate what his father had not necessarily achieved at Ferrari, but emulate his career in some regards by making it into Ferrari. I remember back in last season, there was a test session that Ferrari ran of the 2018 car, and Mick Schumacher obviously was driving in it. And it was a beautiful photo of him going down the back straight in Bahrain. And his mum, Corinna Schumacher, obviously has been through so much with what's happened with Michael over the last 6 or 7 years. It's amazing it's been that long. And everything that's come with that. To see her son Mick going down the back straight, as I said, the only crying shame of it all was that his father was not there to see it as well. Yeah. I'm sure hopefully Michael is following it one way or the other. Hopefully, keep fighting, Michael. Hope you get better soon. But in Mick's case, that is the story. That is the path that I feel people expect and hope that he will be moving onwards. And of course, it all starts at Haas. People are worried about the development he's going to have at Haas. How is that going to benefit him? Especially in a car like this, which is expected to struggle at the back of the field, where only his teammate Nikita Mazepin may be his only competition. I still think it's going to be a valuable experience. Formula One cars are not easy cars to drive. And if Haas, and with the new cars coming in 2022, it helps to be as prepared as you possibly can. And it doesn't matter if you're Mick Schumacher or if you're Lewis Hamilton. It's going to be a challenge for every single driver, assuming Lewis is going to be driving next season. We know Mick will in 2022. We don't know about Lewis yet, but it's going to be a challenge for everybody. And that is when we would hope, with a year under his belt. And let's not forget, in Mick's junior career, despite winning the F2 and F3 championships, his second season was significantly better than his first, because that's when the mistakes kind of got eradicated. Last season in F2, he was fantastic, particularly in the second half of the season. The consistency was amazing. If you want to know what Mick Schumacher is about, watch the feature race in Bahrain, or the Sakir Grand Prix feature race when he was at the back of the field and he got all the way up to fourth in that race, nearly got on the podium after a long battle with Jan Deruvela. It was a brilliant race to see. That is what Mick Schumacher is about: the consistency, the pace, the maturity beyond his years, and there's talent to boot. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what Mick can do. I think that is probably where the attention is going to be for Haas. Ferrari, of course, will be very keen to see how he does, and they will be very much involved in his development of his career. Let's not forget, Haas will be having the technical development at Ferrari at a base at Maranello, specifically built for them. And of course, I imagine some Ferrari personnel will be moving over to work at Haas, almost like a secondment, if you like, because of the budget constraints for next season. There will be resourcing availabilities for Haas to benefit from Ferrari having to move people elsewhere in order to keep them in that base at Maranello. So there's a lot of good things going on for Haas. But like you said, Courtney, a lot of it could come down to whether Haas continue in Formula One beyond 2022.
Yeah, I keep my fingers crossed for Mick. You know, it would be a shame for him to come into Formula One and then, you know, going into 2023, and if obviously it goes on 2022 for them, find himself about a seat. But I'm sure Alfa Romeo would probably be a likely destination. Who knows? You know what? We've spoken on the Alfa Romeo video. If Giovinazzi leaves and it leaves Alfa Romeo and has to have a torrid time, maybe Mick will make that move to Alfa Romeo. I just think that should have been a natural move. I think Mick Schumacher should have gone to Alfa Romeo.
Well, I think that was the intended move with Callum Ilott going to Haas. For whatever reason, perhaps the Mazepin factor put a spanner in the works of the whole thing, and him and his sponsors, Uralkali, gave Haas basically gave him an offer they couldn't refuse. Paraphrasing The Godfather, but probably they had a meeting like that. Who knows? I might have had Mazepin's dad sitting there like Don Giovanni with Gunther Steiner and Gene Haas in the hot seat, and maybe not that extreme, but that probably would explain a lot, given that Callum Ilott is not going to be. I mean, let's have a quick word on Callum Ilott, because a lot of us we probably wondering that while we've mentioned Callum in particular. Callum, obviously the Ferrari development driver, the runner-up last season to Mick Schumacher, and really fought him tooth and nail all the way. In my opinion, Callum was the fastest driver in F2 last year. Him and Yuki Tsunoda in particular, who of course will be in Formula One with AlphaTauri. But for whatever reason, Callum, it just didn't have the consistency of Mick Schumacher. We talk about Mick, but sheer pace-wise, Callum was by far the best driver in F2 in that regard. It's such a shame he won't be in Formula One this season, but obviously he's going to be doing other things outside of Formula One as well. But do you feel that Callum might end up in Formula One in 2022 in particular? Of course, Alfa Romeo, we've already mentioned them. There could be a seat there if Raikkonen and Giovinazzi don't stay on as we expect at this point in time.
Yeah, it depends what happens. Both Alfa Romeo and Haas. I mean, anything could happen given the situation there. But the problem is that in the Formula One scene, there are obviously so many people that want to be driving there. It's so easy to become forgotten. So I'm hoping that with Callum Ilott's case, he takes himself to another driving category where he can showcase his talents and sort of keep himself fresh and put himself sort of in the frame to be there in case something goes wrong with one of these drivers. And also his age, I think he's 24 now, is he not? Is he around 24, 25? He sort of ran out of time there as well. And I just thought that this was a prime opportunity. And many of us thought that he was going to end up at Haas. And then, Mr. Mazepin showed up, and the rest is history.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubting Callum Ilott's merit in terms of his as a driver. He's definitely ready. Nikita Mazepin, yes, he has proven himself to be a race winner and title challenger in F2 and F3. So I feel like, yes, he deserves to be an F1 on merit, but then a lot of drivers deserve to be an F1 on merit that aren't actually there. I mean, look at someone like Luca Giotto or Guan Yu Zhou or Christian Lundgaard. Those guys have proven their mettle, but the opportunity has not presented itself to them. It might be different at Alpine in their academy rather than Renault. We'll have to wait and see. But obviously, we're getting off topic again. But to round this all up, Courtney, I think we've kind of answered this question already, but just for the sake of confirming it, where do we think Haas will be this season? Do you think they've got any chance of leading the C class, which they did last season, or do you feel, alongside Alfa Romeo, or do you feel like they're going to be plumb last?
I reckon they're going to finish bottom, but their only saving grace would be the Ferrari engine. If this Ferrari engine is exceptional, maybe they can finish above Williams if Williams have another bad season. But I expect them to finish last.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very difficult for them. I mean, one telling statistic from last season was that Haas only got out of Q1 on 6 occasions, which is the worst of any team on the grid. And mostly because of George Russell in the Williams being a superstar on Saturday. But at the same time, I just think it's going to be even worse for them this season. I know the Ferrari engine is rumored to be leaps and bounds above what they did last year, and I really hope as a Ferrari fan that that's true. But even then, Alfa Romeo are going to have the same engine as them, so they're going to get the same benefits. So they have to produce a better car than Alfa Romeo, and the 2020 Alfa Romeo was already better than the 2020 Haas. So by proxy, it's not going to be any worse than the 2021 Haas if they haven't improved it. And the Williams, with the Mercedes power unit and the upgrades I imagine they'll put on their car, they're a team that's looking to go up rather than down. So I just feel that Haas are going to be very, very lonesome at the back of the field, regardless of how good that Ferrari engine is. Even if it was the best engine on the grid, I still feel that it'd have to be amazing to be beating Williams this season. But that's my opinion on it. Guys, of course, as always, let us know what you think about this season. Do you feel that Haas will struggle at the back of the field? Are you looking forward to seeing Mick Schumacher? And of course, what are your expectations for Nikita Mazepin? Let's not forget him as well. And let us know what you think of the livery as well. For the rest of the car launches, we've got 2 more to go after this. We've got the Williams launch that we're very much looking forward to seeing. There've been some leaks online of the car design, which look quite cool actually, but we'll have to wait and see if those are actually real or if they're just fakes. We'll have to wait and see, but we'll be reviewing the episode, which will be out on Saturday. And of course, next week, we've got the one I'm looking forward to. That's the Ferrari SF-21. So hopefully that proves to be a good car. We'll have to wait and see. But of course, guys, as always, and for this month of March, let's have a shout out to our sponsors, Manscaped, giving us 20% off and free shipping on the code DNF1. So guys, use the code DNF1 to get 20% off and free shipping on your order. Great products there that we've already advertised on previous episode. Get yourself one from manscaped.com right now. Until then, guys, thank you, Courtney, of course, for joining me once again on the DNF1 F1 podcast. Great stuff. And stay safe. Thanks for tuning in. And we will see you in the next episode of the DNF1 F1 podcast. Take care.
See you soon.